On February 5th at 3:47 a.m. Eastern Time, NASA will attempt something that hasn't been done in 54 years. 4 astronauts will travel farther from Earth than anyone since 1972. But 3 weeks ago, during the final countdown rehearsal, engineers discovered something that changes everything. Welcome back. December 14th, 1972, Gene Cernan left the last human footprints on the moon. If you watched that moment, you were part of 600 million people who believed humanity's future in space had just begun. Then silence, 54 years of silence, until now. Artemis 2 launches in 33 days, and what happened during last week's dress rehearsal reveals why this mission is far more dangerous than NASA admits publicly. The Space Launch System rocket standing in Kennedy Space Center right now is more powerful than the Saturn V that took Armstrong to the moon. But here's what they're not emphasizing. During the Artemis 1 unmanned test in 2022, Orion's heat shield failed. Not catastrophically, but pieces of the material protecting astronauts during re-entry at 25,000 miles per hour simply broke away. For 18 months, engineers investigated. They say they fixed it, but this is the first time human lives depend on that fix. Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialists Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen. 4 names that will either join Armstrong and Aldrin in history or become a cautionary tale. Glover will be the first person of color to leave Earth orbit. Koch, the first woman. Hansen, the first non-American, a Canadian. If you remember Apollo 8 in 1968, when Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders first saw Earthrise, Artemis 2 is designed to recreate that moment. 10 days, 1 orbit around the moon, then home. Last Saturday, the crew completed their final rehearsal. They wore their orange survival suits, climbed into Orion, and ran through every procedure. Everything worked perfectly. Too perfectly, some engineers quietly suggest, because unlike Apollo's incremental test flights, Artemis 2 is betting everything on technology tested exactly once, with problems. Do you remember the confidence of the Apollo era? That certainty is gone. 3 days ago, China announced their lunar landing timeline. Their Long March 10 rocket is already in production. Their lander has completed tests, and unlike NASA, which spent $93 billion developing SLS over 14 years, China's program costs a fraction and moves faster. The new space race isn't about ideology, it's about who controls cislunar space, the region between Earth and Moon that will define power for the next century. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman understands this. Isaacman isn't a politician. He's a billionaire who commanded 2 private SpaceX missions and performed the first civilian spacewalk last year. His confirmation hearing was contentious. Senators questioned his ties to Elon Musk, his leaked document proposing to cut NASA's bureaucracy and pivot away from SLS entirely. Yet here he is, leading the agency during its most critical mission in half a century. What do you think about a NASA run by a private astronaut with commercial interests? Write your thoughts in the comments. Here's the mission. Launch from Kennedy, spend hours in Earth orbit testing systems. Then the rocket fires, sending Orion toward the moon on a free return trajectory. This is crucial. Free return means if everything fails, orbital mechanics alone will bring them home. It's what saved Apollo 13, 4 days outbound. They'll pass through the Van Allen radiation belts, intense radiation trapped by Earth's magnetic field. Then, 230,000 miles from Earth, Orion swings behind the moon's far side. For 30 minutes, complete isolation, no communication, no GPS, no rescue. Just 4 people farther from home than anyone since 1972, relying on systems that have never carried humans. When they emerge and communication restores, they'll be 5,000 miles beyond the lunar far side, farther than Apollo 13, making this the most distant human journey in history. Then the long fall back. 4 more days, re-entry at 25,000 miles per hour, generating 5,000 degrees on that heat shield. The same shield that lost pieces during Artemis 1 point. But here's what NASA isn't saying. If Artemis 2 succeeds, Artemis 3, the actual landing, is scheduled for mid-2027. That depends on SpaceX's Starship being ready. Starship has launched 11 times, failed 9 times. The last 2 launches both exploded during the same flight phase. Internal documents leaked to Politico say SpaceX doesn't expect Starship ready until 2028, maybe 2029, after China lands. So why risk 4 lives on a flyby that doesn't land anywhere? Because 2026 is America's 250th anniversary, and NASA needs a win. Because SLS's $93 billion price tag needs justification. Because stopping now means admitting we bought nothing but an expensive failure. But there's another reason former astronauts mention quietly. An entire generation of flight controllers has never supported a crewed mission beyond low Earth orbit. The Apollo engineers are retired or gone. Their knowledge, their instinct from experience, lost. Artemis 2 is relearning what we once did routinely. That's humbling. If you watched Apollo, you remember the optimism. Moon bases by 19, Mars by 19. None of it happened. We stopped going because going to the moon wasn't about the moon. It was about beating the Soviets. Once we won, the reason disappeared. Will this time be different? NASA points to international agreements, Lunar Gateway Station, permanent bases at the South Pole. But Apollo had timelines too. Artemis 2 exists because Congress mandated it and appropriated just enough to make cancellation politically difficult. That's not commitment. 33 days from now, if weather cooperates, you'll see something you haven't seen since you were younger. A night launch. The flame trail visible for hundreds of miles, a pillar of fire in darkness. If you're near Florida, you'll feel the ground shake. And for 10 days, the world will pay attention to space again. Then what? If Artemis 2 succeeds, pressure to beat China becomes overwhelming. If it fails, the program dies. Not officially, not immediately, but the political will evaporates. NASA has no backup. This is the plan. What strikes me most is how much this reveals about what we've lost. We're not returning because we developed new technology or discovered vital resources. We're going back because we stopped believing we could, and now we need to prove we still can. That's both inspiring and tragic. 54 years ago, we went to the moon and walked away. Now we're trying to go back. And it's harder, not because the engineering is more difficult, but because we've forgotten why it mattered. Where were you on December 14th, Do you think Artemis 2 will launch on schedule? Will we land before China? Should we even try? Write in the comments. Tell me what you remember about Apollo and what you hope for 2026. Thank you for watching. On February 5th, when that rocket lights up the night sky, you'll witness history, whether it succeeds or fails. NASA will broadcast it live worldwide, around 9 a.m. Central European Time. Don't miss it. Until next time.